Hello, this is Apostle Dr. Jewel Williams with our marriage moment. And I have a Q&A. It was a long question, so I had to try to make it as condensed without giving you a paragraph. So basically, the question was, how do you resolve, financial conflicts in marriage, right? How do you resolve financial conflicts? Whereas one thinks one way about money and the other one thinks a different way. So let me give you a scripture. Ephesians 4:2-3. It says, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And I know you might say, what in the world does that have to do with conflict and money? Conflict. Conflict is what it has to do with. Because you know what? There are many things that in marriage we can have conflicts around. We can have conflict around raising children. We can have conflict around you fill in the blank. This just happens to be a conflict around finances. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to remember that we should be oneness in our finances. And that means sometimes it's not an overnight thing. You may have to sit down with your spouse and you may have to talk some things out. You may have to discuss some things. For example, story time, lean in. My husband just talked about how can we kind of advance the payment on our mortgage so that we can pay it off in lesser years. And so I wasn't quite understanding what he was saying. So we had to, so that it didn't become a problem, he had to take the time to explain it. I had to ask the right questions so that we can come to, first of all, understanding. So sometimes the oneness starts with making sure that each of you understands the other's point of view or the other's question. Because sometimes we start fighting over money and we didn't really know what we was fighting about, because one person had one idea, the other person had another idea. And so guess what happened? You weren't coming together, so there was no oneness. So the first thing you want to do is to resolve financial conflicts. Make sure there's a oneness in your marriage. Make sure that you, as the scripture said, you completely humble yourselves. Don't go in thinking, I know it all and I'm the know-it-all. No. We're going in. We're both discovering. There's going to be gentleness. So we're not going to be arguing about it. There's going to be patience. We're going to bear with one another in love until I make sure that you understand my concerns and fears around money. I understand your concerns and fears around money. And then we come together and say, okay, we're going to make every effort to stay unified in this oneness of the Spirit and through the bond of peace. So we're not going to have this blow up about money, right? Now I know you're like, that's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but you're not doing it in yourself, because it said the unity of the Spirit. So if you and I believing in Jesus Christ and we are saying our foundation is on him, why can't he be in the midst of our finances? So when we have to resolve some conflicts, we're going to make sure there's a unity. We're going to pray about it. And then we're going to take time patiently making sure that we're understanding each other's point of view, each other's stand, and then even what may be some fear and anxiety around money. You know, maybe, for example, as a wife, maybe you've struggled, and so you don't want to struggle anymore. And this idea of doing, or like, for example, the example I gave, paying extra may trigger you to feel like, well, I'm not going to have enough to just take care of my basic needs if I'm trying to advance this payment. But then if you have the discussion and share that, like if I told my husband, that's not my fear, but I'm just saying if that was my fear and I shared that with him, then he may say, okay, well, maybe we won't do it so aggressively. Maybe we don't pay it off in 5 years. Maybe we do it in 7. So maybe if I bring that down some, you still have a little bit of a cush. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you resolve the financial conflict. Again, oneness in spirit. You got to make sure that there's the unity. There's this oneness. We're going into this as a oneness. You go in humbly and gently. and patiently, making sure that you understand each other's concerns about money, fears about money, desires and hopes as it relates to money, what aspirations you have around money. So you both make sure you do that. And it says you bear with one another in love. So you don't come in, neither one of you come in as the expert, but you both come in humbly submitting to learn about each other and to understand. Because at the end of the day, it's your money together. This is this oneness. So what are we doing with our money so that we can do a couple of things? That we're investing in our own selves. We're leaving a legacy for our family, but then we're also doing kingdom work. We're investing in ourselves, making sure our bills and our retirement and all of that's taken care of. But then we're also taking the time to make sure that we are leaving a legacy for our children or great-grandchildren. And then we invested in kingdom. So I hope that answers your question on how to resolve financial conflicts. And just a little plug, my husband and I are actually creating a manual around like a 12-month manual around finances. We're going to be probably rolling that out in the new year. We're going to take our church through it and as kind of that beta group and see how that works. And if we like how that works, we will be making that available to the general public. So God bless.